how do you feel that learning the culture and more about the region that you're in will enhance your ability to pick up that language?
You have to be attracted to the language. It's a love relationship, essentially.
Okay.
If you're gonna
Uh-huh.
learn it, if you're gonna learn it at the level that will make you fluent and
Mm-hmm.
that'll make you sound like a native speaker, if that's your goal, you've got to fall in love with it. You've got to have this intimate relationship with the language. And in order to do that is to find what you like about the culture. What is attractive to you about the culture that speaks this language? That could be the music. Like for me, I love salsa. I'm such a big
Mm-hmm.
salsa person. I love it. I've
Uh-huh.
been listening to salsa since I was a kid. I love salsa. I like poems and books in Spanish. So you've got to find these different media through which you can absorb the culture and actually fall in love with the language.
Hey everybody, it's your girl Charlotte Van Horn, Black Expats in Panama. You know what? It has been a minute. I was just telling my guest Claire that it's been a minute since I've been on this side of the interviewing thingamajiggy. So I'm glad to be back. I don't know if some of you know, but I'm actually on a hiatus with both my Black Expats podcast and Black Sit Radio. So right now, what we're doing as far as our network and our platforms is we're just doing the YouTube channel for now. It's just I just have to be real with myself. I'm almost 62 years old and I must be crazy thinking I can do all this stuff. But anyway, so here I am and I'm happy to be here today with Fluent with Claire. Hi Claire.
Hi, thank you so much for coming off of the hiatus to interview me. I'm so excited.
Well, I'm excited too. And the reason why I'm so excited is because, well, first of all, you're an expat. You're an expat who's lived in a couple different countries, which we're going to discuss that. But then also, you teach Spanish and French.
Yes.
And I just think from an expat perspective that if you're really going to move to some other countries where the language is not your first language, trying to learn the language is a real big deal. So I appreciate and applaud you for doing that. And I know that a lot of our listeners will be able to benefit from the information that you share. So let's just go ahead and get started, and I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you. I would like to start out with whatever you want to share about yourself, but then going into how you decided and how you first became an expat.
Yes, thank you so much. Once again, I'm Claire. I'm the owner of Fluent with Claire. I'm a fellow expat. My family and I have been out of the US for a long time, almost 10 years. We left in 2018 for the long term, but we had different periods before that living abroad as well. My first experience abroad was when I was 15, actually.
Hmm.
Um, Foreign languages have always been my thing growing up. My mom taught me Italian when I was 2. And then I started learning Spanish. And at 15, I studied abroad in high school to Mexico. So that was my first experience. It was very formative because from a very young age, I'm already getting a little bit of this global perspective
Hmm.
and getting immersed into different cultures. So that was my first time being abroad for an extended period of time. It was a summer, but that was my first time. After that, I became fluent in Spanish. I was so fluent that in college I was able to work at an embassy for the Embassy of Guatemala, actually in Atlanta, Georgia, and help them with their like visa application processes and double citizenship registration processes. completely in Spanish, working with native Guatemalans. So I was able to do that. And then shortly after, I started learning French, studied abroad for a summer during college in France. And then right after I graduated, I left. I moved to France after graduating college, lived there as a teacher. I taught English for a bit. After that was over, I came back briefly to the US, did US law school, and then left again, enrolled in law school, and another law degree in Paris. And that was it. That was pretty much it. I haven't really lived in the US since then. So it's been a long expat journey.
So your mother taught you French.
My mom taught me
Is your mom
Italian.
French? I'm sorry, Italian.
No, my mom, her native language is English, but she was in the tourism industry when I was growing up, and then later in the aviation industry. So I've always, through my mom, I've always had this like global perspective, and we've always been around people from different countries. So as a child, my mom first had a lot of Italian coworkers in the tourism industry. And then we would meet them often as I was growing up. And this is me at age 2. While I'm already learning how to talk, it's in English and Italian.
Wow.
And she kept that up through my early childhood. And then we added Spanish on top of that. And then I added French on top of that. So, languages have always been, something that's been very inseparable from my life and what I like and what I do, both professionally and personally.
Well, it sounds like your mother had your mother had a big interest, and I'm wondering if some people are just more. Is it just easier for some people to learn languages? Do you think that's true?
I think that's true. I think that I mean, I do believe that each person has their natural gift,
Hmm.
and we get a taste of what that is as kids. Like it's really important for our parents to kind of look, what did God give us? Like you got to pick it
Yes,
up. It
yes,
shows up as a kid, and
yes.
the environment kind of came together. My mom in her tourism industry, that all came together, and allowed my gift to flourish. So yes, I do believe that some people have a natural gift for certain things. Mine is foreign languages. I can pick up on accents very easily. I can change my accents in Spanish, by the way. Like there's a different accent if you're from Argentina, if you're from Spain, if you're from Colombia. They have different accents. I can change those accents. I can pick up the accents. And a lot of the times when I speak foreign languages, even though they're not mine, people mistake me, native speakers mistake me for a native speaker as well.
Wow.
So
So
it is a
what?
gift.
Yes, I believe so. And I think that, I don't know, it seems like the earlier in life you are exposed to multiple languages, the more your brain is susceptible to picking them up. That's what it
That's correct.
seems like. And I guess it's why, people want to teach their kids these, other languages while they're young. I guess because your brain just gets so like in a rut.
Yeah.
More or less, you can go in certain directions because you know how to go in those directions. But when it comes to somebody speaking to you in a language you don't understand, I wish I had that gift
Yeah.
to just be able to pick more of it up. But let me ask you this. I don't know if you said, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta. Okay, okay, Atlanta. Okay, interesting.
In particular, I grew up in an immigrant portion of Atlanta, Georgia. So that's also important because a lot of my environment was multilingual, even growing up and through school, like my primary, elementary, middle school, high school, that was all multilingual because I grew up in an environment that was extremely diverse.
Yeah.
So it just allowed me to become fluent in foreign languages through immersion, pretty much.
Okay.
Yes,
So you basically studied language
kind
after
of.
that. Or
Yeah,
did you
yes.
just
After
study?
that,
You studied, okay, after that you studied language. You studied French, was it?
I did. I studied Spanish in college. I did multiple majors in college. One of them was Spanish. And that was more so like history and literature in Spanish.
Hmm.
And then I also took a French course in college and then a summer French course. And then after that, I taught myself the French.
So between the two, between Spanish and French, which would you say was more difficult, or were they about the same?
I would say French was more difficult. Both were easy, honestly, because they're both Latin-based languages.
Hmm.
So they have very common, there's a lot in common. The grammar rules, the structure, a lot is in common already. So both were easy, but I would say French is a little bit harder just because it's a different, how do I say this? Languages are like genres of music, right? And I
Yeah.
already knew Spanish is one genre. French
Hmm.
is another genre. I say that they're different genres because it's like each language has a rhythm.
Hmm.
And in
Right.
order to get that accent and that pronunciation down, you've got to get that rhythm down. English
Hmm.
has a rhythm. It's kind of like a little bit monotonous.
Hmm.
Spanish is more
Melodic.
melodic. And
Hmm.
then French is between the monotonous and the melodic with some chops in the middle.
Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
you've gotta, before you learn the language, you've got to figure out what kind of song is this language?
Mm.
What's the rhythm that I've got to copy? And for me, the rhythm in French was a little bit harder to copy than Spanish because, like I said, Spanish is the melody and it's a consistent melody. All the vowels
Yes.
sound the same. It's very consistent. Not French. French is a little
Wow.
monotonous plus the melody and then some like chops, kind of like German, it's a little choppy, especially the R's. So that was a
Yeah.
little tiny bit harder for me to copy. But I would say both processes they were easy, honestly. Um, we talked about earlier, learning languages when you're young makes it easy, but it's still easy when you're older because it's just a method that you've got to figure out, right? Figure out the rhythm of the song, get that
Hmm.
down, and then you start adding the vocabulary that you need, and you've got to do that through immersion, and you can simulate the immersion. You can,
Hmm.
listen to the music, watch the movies, watch the cartoons. There's a way to kind of create your own immersion environment, and that'll bring you towards fluency, even if you learn the language later in life.
I think that the other thing that stands out to me, what all of what you just said was that in studying the language, you also study the culture
Yeah,
and I guess the regions.
you do.
Um, yes, and that's an interesting thing to think about. If learning a language is important to you, how do you think understanding the culture, and I like when you said pretty much what is the song, but how do you feel that learning the culture and more about the region that you're in will enhance your ability to pick up that language?
You have to be attracted to the language. It's a love relationship, essentially.
Okay.
If you're gonna
Uh-huh.
learn it, if you're gonna learn it at the level that will make you fluent and
Mm-hmm.
that'll make you sound like a native speaker, if that's your goal, you've got to fall in love with it. You've got to have this intimate relationship with the language. And in order to do that is to find what you like about the culture. What is attractive to you about the culture that speaks this language? That could be the music. Like for me, I love salsa. I'm such a
Mm-hmm.
big salsa person. I love it. I've
Uh-huh.
been listening to salsa since I was a kid. I love salsa. I like poems and books in Spanish. So you've got to find these different media through which you can absorb the culture and actually fall in love with the language. So music will do that to you. You can find any genre of music in your target language. Find
Mm-hmm.
the one that you like. If you like jazz, find it in Spanish. If you like whatever it is, find it in Spanish. Find the
That's
songs that you
interesting.
like and play that constantly so that you immerse yourself. While you're learning the language, you're learning the culture, you're learning their sayings, you're learning how they think about society, life, relationships, etc. And you'll get that experience when you watch the movies as well and the cartoons and you read the books by their favorite authors. Yeah, you've got to just fall in love with the language, go through the process.
I think that I really do. I really do love Spanish. I don't know how deep that love is. Basically, I love the way it sounds. I love the way it sounds. I love the expression and enthusiasm that people add to the language. And I also find, and I don't know whether this is with other languages as well, because I'm just as far as a foreign language to me, Spanish is about it.
Yeah.
But they talk a lot with their hands. So they talk a lot with their hands, they use a lot of gestures. And I think that for me, that helps. That really helps when I'm not quite understanding what they're saying. The fact how they express themselves, kind of helps me get a gist of what they're feeling.
Yeah, I love that. So in Spanish in particular, and in a lot of different Latin-based languages, the language comes, you communicate not just with what you're saying, but also your hands, like your gestures. So it's fun to learn that as well. And you'll pick that up, if you're learning, if you're teaching yourself through movies or cartoons, you'll pick that up. Like in Spanish, like using
Mhm.
this to talk, these
Yes,
kind of
yes.
gestures, or like if you're really worked up,
Yeah.
little gestures like that. You learn that. And that's the fun part about learning language. It doesn't have to be in a textbook. If you learn the culture while you're doing that, you just pick up so much more. And there's so many other ways to communicate besides just words.
That is true. And one of the things, like you said, immersion. And when you say immersion, do you mean you need to put yourself in a community or area where it's constant speaking of that language? Or do you mean, constantly listening to novellas or music? What does immersion, when you say that, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, so there are different degrees of immersion. And for an aspiring expat, it's not going to be, you know, at the absolute immersion spectrum, side of the spectrum. For an aspiring expat, immersion is going to look like simulating immersion through music. So you pick your genre that you like, find the
Hmm.
songs in Spanish or whatever your target language is, and you listen to that throughout your day. When I was a kid, I would listen to Selena Quintanilla, the Texan Mexican artist. I would listen to her songs over and over, and I would try to pick up the lyrics. Sometimes I would get a notebook and I would write down the lyrics by myself. What did I hear? And write that down. Pause the song, write it down, listen a little bit more, pause the song. That's one way to simulate immersion if you're an aspiring expat and you're not in the Spanish speaking community. Get the music and try to transcribe the lyrics by yourself. That trains your ear to the accents and the inflections, and you'll get the rhythm of the language from that. So that's one way. I would also watch cartoons in Spanish.
Hmm.
Living as a child in Atlanta, Georgia, I would watch Mafalda, one of the Spanish cartoons from Argentina. I would put any movies that I would watch, I'd put it in Spanish instead of English. I would sometimes put the subtitles in Spanish so that I could see how you spell the words that they're saying. You can do that. So it's pretty much just substituting the things that you like in your hometown with something that's in the target language. If there's a multicultural event in town and it's going to be in Spanish, I would go. Um, I had a lot of friends that spoke Spanish. They spoke English also, but I would use that as my opportunity to speak to them in Spanish. Or if I went to their house, I would talk to their parents in Spanish. Um, I would go to restaurants, and this is a Spanish speaking restaurant, a Colombian restaurant, etc. Order in Spanish and see if the person responds by speaking to you in their language. I volunteered a lot as a translate, as an interpreter. Yes, at parent teacher conferences for different schools, I was the little high
Mm.
schooler that was translating from
Wow.
Spanish to English and English to Spanish. I would do a lot of volunteer work in Spanish. So you just have to look for these little opportunities. where you'll be where you'll get an opportunity to speak Spanish. And even if you're not fluent, don't worry about it. You have to kind of get rid of the fear or the embarrassment
Embarrassment.
making a mistake because
Yes.
that's one of the reasons why kids learn foreign languages quickly. They don't have that embarrassment that we have.
Yes. Yeah.
Get rid of that a little bit and it'll come off little by little the more that you practice and you make mistakes and you realize it's not a big deal. But put yourself in these situations where even if I'm not fluent, at least I'm going to practice and you will become fluent the more that you do that. So create that immersion. The other spectrum is travel to Spanish speaking countries, spend a little bit of
Mhm.
time there. And that, that'll get you a little bit closer to your goal of becoming fluent.
Yes, and you know something, I think that I forgot what I was getting ready to say to you. Doggone it, it was good too. I was kid shows. I think for me, watching kid shows, especially shows like Sesame Street, where kids are
Yes.
children speak slower. And I think sometimes older people speak slower because for me it's like it's a lot to catch at a very fast pace. Things are moving very, very fast. But let me shift gears for a second, and I want you to talk to us a little bit about your expat life let's start with France. Like, what was the things that you liked the most about it? What was their residency process? And what were the things that you wish you knew before you actually moved there? But you did study there. So
It
your
is.
experience is kind of layered.
It is.
So tell
Yes,
us, tell us something about that area, because I don't hear a lot of people going there. So I know that a lot of people will be interested in whatever your perspective is.
yeah. So my expat spirit experience in France started off with me going as a student. So after I did my U.S. law degree, I wanted to do a law degree in France. Um, so I applied for a student visa. I applied for the school, got my
Mhm.
acceptance letter, applied for a student visa from the U.S. Did the whole process. Once I got the student visa, my family and I moved to France. We moved to Paris. Um, that was very easy because once you get the student visa, there's like, little formalities that you have to do once you arrive and then you're done. You have the student visa, you can stay for the duration of your studies. My
Okay.
program was an extra year. It was an extra law degree on top of my previous one. So it was just a year-long program. And it was an amazing experience. I studied at the Université Paris-Nanterre, which
Mm.
is a little bit outside of Paris. It looks like University Paris Nanterre in English.
Uh-huh.
um, it's a little bit outside of Paris. I had an amazing experience, honestly. The school was a good school. I learned what I wanted to learn. I went there particularly because it had some courses that weren't offered in U.S. law
Uh-huh.
schools
Uh-huh.
anywhere. So I did that, had a wonderful experience, lived as a student. I was able to see how higher level education looked in
Hmm.
France. And so that was
Hmm.
just a different type of, I don't know how to be eloquent when I say it's just a different level of existing. You're not a tourist,
Hmm.
you're not a native, but you're inside the institutions that are fundamental to the country. So you're just getting a lot of different perspectives about
Ah.
France and the people and what's
Mhm.
important, culturally also. Just the relationship between students and teachers is completely different than what we have in the U.S. I think in the US, things are more collaborative between students and teachers. It's a little bit more rigid in France. There's more of a
Really?
hierarchy. Yes, there's more of a hierarchy. Your teacher has the answers. You've got to figure out what those answers are. And it's very strict. They don't award good grades per se. It's like it's not normal to get A's that they just don't use A. What is equivalent to A? They don't use it. So you kind of have to like aim for a little bit lower. There's just a lot of little knickknacks, cultural
Really?
knickknacks, cultural yeah, little cultural differences that I was able to perceive from that 1 year as a student. So it was a great experience overall.
How did you receive that?
I took it as a fait accompli. I took it as a fact, something that you can't change. You just kind of have to exist within that. No, I can't go and superimpose my American expectations and my American needs on top of that. Okay, they don't award A's. Somehow I was able to get some,
Yes.
which was extraordinary. You know, like I had great experience with my professors, and I was able to get great grades despite the
Hierarchy. So
yeah,
the reason that I asked that is because you were still very young to be
kind
able.
of.
How
Yeah,
old were you? Were you
I was
like,
a little bit of an older student because I'd already done my JD. So this
okay,
was like a professional degree on top of the professional
okay,
degree. So I was a little
okay,
bit
okay,
older than traditional kids. I was in my
okay,
late 20s.
okay.
Yeah, like
Well,
20,
I mean, I work with
28-ish.
expats every day, all day. And, a lot of them are in their late 60s and their late
Okay.
70s, and they still don't know that. They still don't really understand that, when you go to a place, you can't expect for them to change their rules because you're here. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So for a young person to be like, okay, that's how it is. That's the expectation, and that's what I have to meet. Because there will be others who actually go to places and say, well, that's not fair. Because that hasn't been their experience with their teachers in the United States. They do say that in the United States there's just too much of that coddling. There's too much celebrating just the very, very little things. And nowadays, um, you see kids graduating from Head Start. I mean, literally cap and gown and everything. And I think that there's two schools of thought on that. I mean, a little off subject, but you know,
Yeah.
talking about that way that we do things because first of all, the first time I ever had a cap and gown on was high school.
Yes.
Was high school. I mean, you get to go on from one school or, elementary school to middle school to high school or whatever. It's acknowledged that you have completed that, but the cap and gown was reserved for the finish.
Yeah.
Was
That was
reserved
my
for the finish. And some people is like, when you're giving a kid a cap and gown for completing Head Start, they feel that it diminishes the importance, or the reverence for
Mhm.
higher education. And when those cap and gowns are really, really earned. And so, just wondering how people that have kids that have already started out with this US type system and relationship adjust to things that may not be the same when they go to other countries. So I hadn't really thought about that. So that's an interesting, very interesting perspective. So you were there as a student and your experience was different because like you said you also got to see some behind the scenes things that just a regular expat may not have been privy to.
Yeah, no, it was wonderful to study with, French peers and to interact with very esteemed professors and to be in a wonderful university. It was a great experience, honestly. I graduated from there, and then after that, I started working at a law firm in France right after. That was a wonderful experience. Also, very different to see how yeah, where how the different expectations between like how we work in the US and how work is done in France was very nice to experience. And then working completely in French was interesting, like having meetings and having to
Yes.
communicate. This is my research. This is what I discovered. This is what I think the next step should be. All of this about law in French was formative for me as well.
Interesting. That is interesting. Because so first of all, in order to get that job, you had to be bilingual. You had to, well, not even bilingual. Was it bilingual or you just had to know French?
The job was in international law, so the cases are in English, Spanish, and French, so trilingual. Yeah, had to be trilingual, had to have the international law studies, which I did, and then the two systems, two legal systems were needed as
Okay.
well.
So
Mhm.
then on top of that, you were able to work there. Did that involve getting a work permit or had you at that point decided to become a resident? And in that region, are you allowed to work there or are there protected professions there, like in some of, Central and South American countries?
Yes, definitely. So I had to, my student visa was only for study, so I had to obtain a work visa, or not a work visa. It's like a resident card,
Mhm.
but the way that you get the resident card is by being a highly qualified professional.
Mhm.
So with my work, I had to fill out, the type of work that I was going. I had to fill out an immigration application that detailed the type of work I was going to do, the law firm that I was working for, my education history, my work history, etc. And the immigration officials in France review all of that and determine whether or not you qualify as a highly qualified professional, which
Wow. Mhm.
they approved it on that basis,
Mhm.
and gave us what's called a passeport talent, which is a resident card for a few years. I don't recall exactly how much, but maybe like 4 or 5 years or so. And with that, you can stay as a resident and work in France um, and have all of the bells and whistles and privileges of a resident, essentially.
They have something like that, or I know that during certain periods, like of development of Panama, like with certain things that they're working on, if they lacked the amount of high level professionals in the country for certain major projects, they would allow people with those particular skills and qualifications to come in as a resident because of their special professional skills. And I don't know if then there's something called a professional visa, which I don't believe it's that, but what you're talking about, I believe they do sometimes for certain things. Like, they may have allowed more nurses or physicians to come here and work in Panama, perhaps. I'm not sure, but for example, like maybe during COVID, during a major crisis, where, where they needed help in certain professions and or the people of the country were, being overwhelmed or something like that, they can call that. They can say, we'll let these people in for whatever, they can do
Yeah,
that. Mhm. So it's a big part of being an expat. So what was it like as far as the cost of living there?
I would say that in Paris, it's kind of like I would say it's between like a DC and New York.
Mm,
Not as
right.
expensive as New York, but a little bit
Hmm.
more expensive than what we experienced in DC. In Paris, very small apartments are at least 1,000 euros or so.
Mm,
Um, so it's quite pricey. The good thing though is we lived there right after COVID occurred. And
uh-huh.
so there was a lot of work from home going on, and that
Hmm.
allowed my family and I to move outside of Paris. So I would just commute to
Ah,
Paris when I needed
yes.
to be in office. So we actually moved to a city called Rouen. It's at the border. It's close. It's on your way to the UK.
Mm, mm, okay.
Close to the Manche. So it's in the coast of France and I don't recall exactly how far from Paris, but like maybe an hour or a little bit more on train from Paris. So we were able to do that
Well,
and take
that
advantage of a
worked out.
lower cost of living.
So you already had your family then.
We did, yeah. So my husband moved to France with me when I did the law degree, which was interesting. Living as a student, but not being a traditional student, like being
Yes.
married and all of that. And then my daughter was born in France. So yeah, I had a family life in France, which required us to move outside of Paris and take
Mhm.
advantage of a lower cost of living. So we did that.
So did they have good salaries though?
Um, Not compared to the US. I would say that the US salary in the legal field is higher than in France.
Hmm.
So no, by comparison, no, but you can still have a good life on the salary that's provided. It's just not going to be what you could do in the US.
So how did you transition out of France, and did you go straight from there to Mexico, or was there a space where you went to the US after that?
No, we went straight from France to Mexico, and that was
Okay.
because after my daughter was born, I was on maternity leave, and France maternity leave is a few months.
Mm-hmm.
So I was on maternity leave, and the end of my maternity leave was approaching, and I just couldn't imagine going back to work that soon. My daughter was probably 3 months old at the time. So I had this crisis, to be honest, towards the end of my maternity leave. I was so worried about, not being ready to go back to work. Of course, our residence was tied to work,
Work,
so
right.
there were lots of implications, implications in my decision to not want to not return back to work. So that was difficult to navigate at the beginning. We ended up deciding that we were just going to jump. And we decided that I wasn't going to return back to work
Mhm.
immediately. I left the law firm that I was employed at in France, which meant we had to leave France. And we decided to come to Mexico because my husband is from here. He was raised
Right.
here. And we kind of had a infrastructure a little bit already in Mexico that would be supportive.
Yeah. I love
So
that. I love
we
that.
came so I could have.
So the way that work visa goes is that when your job ends, the visa ends.
Yeah, I think at the beginning, I don't recall the specifics towards the end, but at the beginning, at least of the beginning of the period that they, award the card for, I know that it's tied to your employee, the current employer that sponsored your work visa. So we took that as a loss. Um,
Uh-huh.
and gained, on the other hand, time for me to have a longer maternity leave and be more present with my kids and not have to rush back to work.
Well, that is definitely important. So then you went back to Mexico, and that's where you've been ever since.
Been here ever since. It's been 3 years.
3 years. So tell us about it. How is it different from France? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it?
Yes. So to be honest, I know a lot of expats probably experience the same, but to be honest, it doesn't matter how long you've been outside of the US, you do get homesick. Like it just comes and goes. This feeling of being homesick.
Mhm.
Um, And I think Mexico has helped that because the culture is a little bit closer to American culture compared to France. French culture is a little bit more rigid than what we have in the U.S. Mexican culture is a little bit, yeah, it's less rigid. It's closer to how we operate in American culture. So coming to Mexico it's been like coming closer to home almost. I'm not as homesick as I
So the
used to get.
proximity.
Yes, and
It's
the
also the
proximity.
proximity. I
The
think that
prox-
when I don't know how long was the average flight, say from France to Atlanta?
like 6, 7 hours.
That's not too bad. I mean, that's not like moving to Africa, which is like,
No.
one of my things. It's like that is just so far from home.
Mhm.
It is just so far from home.
Yeah.
And I think that just that distance makes you feel that way and probably will probably make you feel that way anyway. Because it's about 5 hours to Panama from DC.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I got used to that 5 hours, but I think, anything less than 10 hours, you're good. But people's talking about Thailand and places like that, and it's like that's a world away from home, you know.
Yeah.
That's a
That
world
is
away from home. So go ahead. So sometimes you get a little homesick.
true. I do get homesick, and being in
Yes.
Mexico compared to France helps because the culture is closer to what I'm used to. The
Yes,
proximity, like you said, it doesn't feel so far away. The climate, I realized after my daughter was born that I am so sensitive to climate now. If it's too dark outside and too cold outside, that affects my whole mood for a long
yes,
time.
yes,
So I'm a happier person because it's always bright and sunny and warm, and I have energy because of that. I feel like I can
yes.
myself because of that.
You spend more
Um,
time outside,
oh yeah, which I
getting
love
that
to do.
vitamin D. How far are you from, what town do you live in, and how far is that from Mexico City, say?
I live in Puebla, which is probably 2.5 hours by car from Mexico
Okay,
City. hmm So
okay.
still not too far.
hmm So your kids speak Spanish and French?
Not really. My son used to speak a little French. He
Yes,
was so little when we were in France.
yes.
So he spoke a little, but he was like learning French when we were there.
Mhm.
But now that he doesn't hear it as often, Spanish has definitely replaced it and taken over. So
Yes.
he communicates in both languages. Well, my daughter too. She's younger, but they both communicate in both languages.
And then you're their mommy. So we
Uh,
could get into, that other thing that you do as well. So I mean, I guess, with your Fluent with Claire, let's talk about that. Let's talk
yes.
about that. Let's talk about how it started, you know, um, and how does it work?
Yes. So Fluent with Claire is brand new. I just started it a few months ago. The reason I started it is because I felt like I was sitting on my gift. And as an expat, I felt like there was just a need to provide these easy ways for expats and aspiring expats to become fluent. A lot of the
Mhm.
times when, aspiring expats talk about moving abroad, one thing that's challenging or scary for them is, well, how am I going to learn the language? Becoming fluent to the typical expat is a few years. You automatically think it's going to take a few years to become fluent, and it doesn't have to. I've never taken a few years to become fluent. So I wanted to, it's only taken me months. It took me 4 months to become fluent in French. So I wanted to share my methods with aspiring expats and expats, and do that so that you kind of tap into a new world and a new life if you've already moved abroad. Um, I think that living in a country where you don't speak the language, you might learn about the culture, et cetera, but it kind of feels like you're living behind a glass window, and there's a lot that you're not able to um, experience because of the language barrier. Um, so I just wanted to open up the doors to new worlds, um, for the expat and aspiring expat community. So yes, I started it a few months ago. How it works is I provide online, live, full immersion classes in English and Spanish. Um, anyone interested can sign up on my website, Fluent with Claire, and I have courses that are, I have different types of courses. The most basic course is a full language course. And then I have conversation courses also, conversation circles, where you essentially speak with me in a small group of learners, and I gently correct the pronunciation and the grammar. I correct each student while we speak, and the subject of the discussion is curated around media. So we might watch a news clip, we might watch a cartoon clip, we might listen to a song, and then that guides our discussion. And while you're talking naturally and becoming comfortable in speaking in your target language, I gently correct the pronunciation and the grammar and teach through that.
So,
The good thing, oh, sorry.
so somebody that was joining a conversational option. First of all, how long is the conversation? And second of all, do they need to be a little bit experienced with speaking Spanish, or I guess you do it in Spanish and French, right?
Yes, it
So
depends.
do they need to be, what level do they need to be able to really get something out of that option?
So for the conversation circles, you would need a basic level of Spanish, if Spanish is your
Okay.
target language. And by basic, I mean that you can kind of communicate ideas. You can say a sentence or communicate your idea in 2 to 3 words at least in Spanish.
Okay.
Very basic. You don't have to have grammar structure. You don't have to have pronunciation down. The key is that if you need to communicate, you can do
Communicate.
so in 2 or 3 sentences, and I will build you up from there. So that's what it's good for. If you don't have that requisite level, then the best thing would be a full course, which is 6 weeks with me, and I go through everything: pronunciation, grammar, forming sentences, and all of that also is full immersion. I only speak the target language with you, and
Mhm.
it's done through media. So if you tell me you like jazz, I'll look for a song in your target language. We'll listen to that. You'll help me transcribe the lyrics. We'll train your ear. I will weave in grammar lessons into that. And then all the homework is always just listening to the songs, watching the news clips again, watching the cartoons again, so that you can actually become fluent without a big time commitment.
So you might have a situation where in the group, when you say like the group, is that so everybody would work together, and do you have individuals? You have individual classes too?
No, I do small group classes.
Okay,
And
okay.
the reason I do that is because it's very critical for whoever wants to become fluent. The fastest way to do that is to get out of your comfort zone. You've got to be able to talk to people. And it's not just going to be with me, it's got to be with peers as well. So I do small group classes. The conversation class is a small group, a small conversation circle. And then the beginner Spanish is also a small group class as well.
So when you have the 6 week program, how many days per week is that? Or how many
That
hours?
Yes, that's each class is 1 hour. The
Okay.
conversation circle is 1 hour. That's one day a week. And then
Hmm.
the beginner Spanish class, the full course, that's 2 days a week. Each class is 1 hour long,
Hmm.
and that course is 6 weeks long. And we'll go through all of the basic Spanish in that
So
course.
when you have those classes, when you have those classes, the homework is to review the document,
Always.
to review the songs or whatever the media is that you're learning. It's not necessarily like you have workbooks or anything.
No, never, because I think the largest barrier to becoming fluent is time. And I want to make
Yes.
sure that I'm not taking extra time for you. And that's how I built my courses. My courses are early morning courses. They're 6 a.m.
Now, how
courses,
early morning is you talking?
5 a.m., 6 a.m. early classes. Before you go to work, before your day starts, before the kids wake up, whatever you've got going on, I've got early morning classes. And then the homework is only going to be listening to the songs, watching the movie clip, watching the news clip, because I want to make sure that you have time to learn the language.
That's it.
It'll never be workbooks or, things that'll take time out of your day. It'll always be something that you can do in the background, absorb the language through osmosis and keep your day going.
That was when I used to take when I tried instruction. That was the biggest thing. While I was with my instructor, I felt like it was positive and it was productive. Even though I was a little bit overwhelmed, I had a great instructor, and she would weave in culture of Panama. She's a Panamanian, and she would weave in, and she knows I'm very interested in Afro culture. So she would weave in like different things. She would show me stuff and everything would be great until it was time to meet again because I had homework to do that I just inevitably did not do. And then I felt like a failure. And it's just, it was it was very personal to me. And I said, I can't do this because I don't have time for the follow up. So it was the reason why I failed at a relationship with an instructor.
That's understandable. It's a common thing, honestly, especially, I mean, I feel like most expats, we're busy. There's a lot going on. A lot of us have a lot, commitments during our day. I don't want the course to be an interruption. So I particularly crafted a course that's going to be something that's before your day starts, and the homework will always be something you can put in the background, listen to, watch while you're doing whatever. And it's a repetition, honestly, of what you did in class. If you repeat what you learned in class, you will become fluent. You'll commit that to long-term memory. So it's not going to be um, anything time consuming or anything new that you're having to do in between the courses.
So do you only speak the subject language during classes?
Yes, from day one, no matter what level you're in, vas a escuchar esto, ¿sí? Desde el primer día. Es
Hmm.
importante que uno entrene sus oídos.
Hmm.
Es
You gotta
importante
hear
que
it. You
sí,
gotta practice.
hay que entrenar los oídos, hay que practicar, hay que sentirse bien, cómodo.
Mhm. Mhm.
Tienes que comunicar conmigo en español, yo comunico con ustedes en español.
Okay.
¿Sí?
And it's like you kind of get from somebody that's not that great as Spanish, but you kind of can pick up what you're saying by
Ujú.
listening and watching you. You know, use it again, like, you know, the gestures, and you're not speaking fast. You're not
Um,
speaking fast.
and I slow it down. I use gestures. Sometimes I'll grab a notebook and I'll draw. But if there's a word that I know you probably won't understand, I'll draw it and I'll show you what it is. I'll never say it in your native language.
Mhm.
At first, you'll understand, I don't know, 30%. The
Uh-huh.
next that time we meet, you'll understand 40%. The next time you'll meet, you'll understand a little bit more. The goal is progress. It's not, I understood everything she said. No, the goal
Right.
is that every time that we have class, you're understanding
A little
more,
bit
you're
more.
building fluency. And it's very interesting because one way to know that you're on your way to becoming fluent is one, you'll start dreaming in the language. So when
Mm,
I hear students say, I had a dream in Spanish,
mm.
it's working.
It's
The immersion
working.
is working.
Yeah.
So it's very effective. That's how I learned French. Honestly, the two courses that I took at my university were immersion method. From day one, my professor spoke only French, and it's honestly the best way to become fluent quickly.
So when you're with the group, and remind me to tell you about my college experience with Spanish.
Yes.
So when you're with the group, so does the group like help each other? Like when you're trying to explain something, do people try to reiterate what you're saying to make sure that they understand what you're saying? And how does that work? How does that work?
Yeah. So for example, if I've said a word that someone doesn't understand,
Mm-hmm.
I asked them,
No entiende.
¿entendieron? ¿Entendieron esta
Yes.
palabra? Let me make up a word. Like if I want to say cielo, cielo,
Mm-hmm. The
cielo,
sky.
no? If I want to
Mm-hmm.
say that word and I notice people are looking like they don't understand, ¿entendieron cielo? No, no entendieron
Mm-hmm.
cielo. Okay, cielo. Entonces dibujo cielo. I would
Yes.
draw it,
Clouds. Mhm.
draw it to the sky. I point to the sky. Or
Uh-huh.
someone else might chime in, but they have to speak the another student might chime in on the explanation, but they've got to explain it in Spanish,
In
right? So they're
Spanish.
also practicing, okay, cielo, sabes el sol.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Después tenemos el cielo,
Uh-huh.
sol, la
Uh-huh.
luna
Yep. The moon.
y el cielo. So
Okay.
we
The
go
sky and the
through it and
clouds.
explain everything. We
Yes.
explain around the concept until the person understands it. And it can be a team, a group effort, as long as it's all in Spanish.
Right. So what about so you say small groups, like what does the ideal group number look like for you?
Yes, the ideal group number is five, and I can go
Mhm.
up to 10. If I have an interest that surpasses 10, I would open up another session, another cohort of the course.
So if you had a group of five, if you
Mhm.
had a group of five that was interested in doing this together, does everybody pays separately, even
Mhm.
though your times would be scheduled the same?
Yes.
Are you established with your pricing? Is it public?
The pricing is public.
Mhm.
Right now, I have a discount, by the way,
Okay,
25% off. If you go to my website, there's a 25% off discount.
okay.
Um, the Spanish conversation course is about $200.
Hmm. And this is for 6 weeks or
That's the conversation for 4 weeks course.
4 weeks? Okay,
Mhm. And then the 6 week course, I'll have to go in and look at it again. That's a
okay,
little bit more.
okay.
Um, I'll look at it again. My apologies. I don't remember the exact price.
That's okay. So that, and you're talking to both of those, you're talking to combo.
Yep. Hmm.
Combo. So for example, I have a group that we meet every fourth Sunday. And it's Cafe and Conversation. And the way Cafe and Conversation started, it's part of my community service. And the way Cafe and Conversation started was me and my neighbors were working out together. We had one neighbor, a mutual friend who was bilingual. And when she had to go back to work and left us alone, I was mortified because I'm like, I'm not going to be able to communicate with them without Gigi. And I don't know if they felt that way too, but they were Venezuelan, my vecinos. And but we decided I almost dropped out and it was like they were my personal trainers because I was just so intimidated about being with them and not understanding what they were saying and everything like that. So I just decided that I needed that to do that physical exertion. And then I also really enjoyed spending time with my neighbors, so that's the other thing about learning the language. So I just decided to keep going. And what we've discovered was that we did so much better without our mutual friend neighbor. And so I was like, wow, what if other people could do this? And I thought about Black expats moving into, because it's like I don't think that a lot of us are trying to go, I just want to go where Black expats are. And I think that a lot of us want to integrate, and how wonderful that could be if they could bring their neighbors to an event, cafe and conversation. Make a long story short, I've been doing it for more than 3 years. I haven't changed anything about it. People come, and what's so powerful about it is that some people have never spoken Spanish out loud. So just them being able to speak Spanish out loud. We have a little cheat sheet and we introduce ourselves and have this little short conversation with each other in Spanish. And just them being able to do that and see other people who are trying and struggling just like we are, being able, we don't go real deep in Spanish, like, okay, nothing but Spanish here, because we would get nowhere. I mean, we would literally just be, just running up against a wall constantly. But you do get to connect with people, and we do talk about what our fears are, what is working, how much we've improved, what are our goals for the following year, and we share. And I think that is what is super rich. And in thinking about this, I would be like, wouldn't it be so neat if I could get a group of us to commit to taking these classes? It would be a wonderful extension.
I would love to have you guys. We would have so much fun. We would have so much fun. The conversation course would be a lot of fun because you guys have already, experienced that setup. And
Mhm.
then, like you said, you guys could practice, get out of your comfort zone. I would curate the discussion. We'd use media and music and movies, etc. And we can talk about cultural stuff. It's a learning experience all around, not just the language, but the culture. Yeah, I think that would be a lot of fun. I'd love that.
I do too. I think it would be. I'm so glad that we're having this conversation because we had um a surface conversation about the things that you're doing enough then to know that I would be very interested in sharing this with our audience. But getting more into the nuts and bolts of it is even better. Now, going to my trauma, I started college at a much later age. I started college at 30. And I want to say a foreign language was required. And I took Spanish. And there was a guy there, and his philosophy was, I am not speaking to you guys in English. But he didn't come at it with the cielo and the sol and the luna. No, no,
Oh my
no.
gosh,
He
no
would just
A's.
stand there with his hands to his side,
Oh.
speaking to us. And it was horrible. It was horrible. Nobody ever knew what he was talking about. And he was like, no, I'm not speaking English. This is a Spanish class. And make a long story short, everyone was failing in the class. Everyone was failing in the class. Well, that's not true. It wasn't everyone, but more than half the class was failing. And for kids, failing a little class here or there is not as big of a deal as an A personality, 30-year-old, mom and paying for this myself. I want an A. Um, and he just dismissed us. And I think that sometimes I felt like the professor just took for granted those young kids that were there and that this was it and whatever. But he had a mama bear in there. And I complained to the head of the Spanish department. And literally, the head of the Spanish department came to our class one day. And he came in, and if you could see the teacher, some of the kids probably didn't even know who he was, but I knew because I had already dealt with him. And he just came in and he sat in the back of that class. And this teacher was so bad that the head of the department didn't even allow him finish the class. He got up, came from the back of the class, and asked the teacher to come and speak with him outside. That teacher literally came back, grabbed his stuff, and left, and we never saw him again. And for the rest of that semester, the head of the department was our teacher. That is
That's
how
not
bad it
teaching.
is. So
That's not teaching.
that's not. That's not. It wasn't. And when it was just mean spirited. We were all failing. Well, those of us that really, some people probably didn't need it as much as the real beginners. So it's like the stuff. And if you do this all the time, I think not to ever feel like this is easy, this shouldn't be so hard because everybody's at different places. And I think that for older people, what do you think about teaching older people? Do you think that there is a stark difference in teaching older versus younger and the way that we learn?
No, I don't think there's a difference. The key is always going to be fall in love with the language. You've got to make sure that your students connect with the language. And the easy way to do that is through music. So
Hmm.
it's the same method. I would ask each class, each student, what's your favorite type of music? And I would find that genre in Spanish and connect that student to that language using their favorite genre music, using movies and cartoons that discuss topics that are meaningful to the class that they
Hmm.
can connect with. All I have to do is facilitate that connection, and then once that's connected, then you're going to start the learning process because now they're interested and they're invested and they're having fun, and it's done in a way that's going to facilitate long-term memory through repetition, through music. All of that stuff is going to commit it all to long-term memory. So in short, no, I don't think it's going to be different. It's just the first step is I've got to connect each person to the language by whatever they like the most.
Commitment. It sounds like, regardless of your age, you have to have a commitment to it. I
Mhm.
think that the philosophy and the plan that you have is attractive because it's not like I'm going to school, I got workbooks, I got because a lot of us, particularly in my expat groups, we're not going to want to do that. We're going to want to be conversational. Um, and when we get out here and we're doing stuff and we're ordering, because one thing we could do, honey, we can order drinks and food.
Oh, yes.
We will get us some drinks and food
Yes.
and then
Uh,
say "Pataye va." We know how to say we want this to go, and we want our bill now, and everything like that. But I think this would be a great exercise for us. And I really do appreciate your sharing your concept and your experience with us. As we get ready to wrap up, I just want to turn it over to you to, tell us how we find you, give us any last parting advice about, falling in love with the language. That's going to definitely stick in my head. Anything else about that? Any other tips? You're an experienced expat. There are people watching who are only at this level of their expatriate experience where they're just still looking at people and listening to people. So, any advice that you might give an expat that's or somebody that's thinking about being an expat, and then we'll go from there.
yes. Advice to aspiring expats. It's an advice that I give myself. I always ask myself if I'm ready to jump. Before I do anything, I set aside a moment where I question myself,
Mhm,
interrogate myself. No, are you ready to jump? I ask myself that question.
mhm,
And I wait to see what feelings come up after I ask
mhm,
myself that question. Because intuition isn't, it's kind of hard to figure out what your intuition is guiding you to do. The only way to do that is to give yourself some quiet time. So I ask myself the question, I wait to see what am I feeling inside after I ask myself that answer. And a lot of the times before I say yes, I have a feeling of if I have to put my right foot in front of the other in this current situation, and I feel like that's going to make me give up, or I can't even do that, I can't take one step forward in my current situation, then I jump.
mhm.
Then I know that I'm overdue to jump, honestly. And that's essentially how I felt when I made the decision to leave what was my current home, France, for Mexico. I had
Mhm.
to ask myself, okay, am I ready to jump? And what I felt after that question was if I've got to put one more foot forward in France, I'm gonna lose it. I don't want to go back to work with my young baby. I can't keep on with the status quo. Something has to change. And that's what made me make that leap of faith and have faith that things were just going to align after I did it. And they did. So that's my advice. You've got to just give yourself space to talk to yourself for a minute, ask what you want to do, how you're feeling in your current situation, and what's the time limit that you have on your current situation. And if it is now, then make that leap, make that jump, prepare as much as you can in the time that you've allotted yourself, and
Right.
have faith that everything else will align after you've made that jump. That's my advice.
Yeah, I think some people just get stuck, but I like that philosophy because sometimes you're like, I don't know if I could take this next step. I don't know if I could take this next step. And if you're asking yourself that, then that means it's probably time to leap.
Yeah, you
That's
feel
good. I
it,
like that. That's
feel
good
it.
stuff, honey.
Thank you. Thank you. That was my experience. So I can only speak on what kind of
Yes,
allowed me to make that jump. So I
I'm
hope it helps someone out there.
sure it will.
Before we part, I would like to offer some pronunciation advice to
Okay,
your viewers, if I may. Anyone out there
sure.
learning
And
Spanish, and
me.
yes, anyone out there learning Spanish and that wants to sound a little bit more like a native speaker, I've got one trick for you, one of many tricks for you. And the trick is to remember that vowels are sticky. What does that mean? Vowels are sticky. If you have a word that ends in a vowel, A, E, I, or U, that word's going to stick to the word that follows it. You know how people say Spanish sounds so fast?
Mhm.
There's a reason because the vowels are sticky. If a word ends in a vowel connected to the next word. So my favorite song, by way of example, my favorite song is Mark Anthony. It's called ¿Qué precio tiene el cielo? I don't know if you heard it. It's a salsa song.
We have heard it. I bet maybe
Ha,
that's another name because I love Mark
no,
Anthony.
¿qué precio tiene el cielo? Que alguien me lo diga. That one?
Uh-huh.
I love that one. So if you think about the chorus, the first line of the chorus is ¿Qué precio tiene el cielo? ¿Qué ends in a vowel, right? So that ¿qué has to stick to the next word. ¿Qué
Yeah.
precio?
Mm-hmm.
Now, ¿qué precio is one
One
word?
line.
Because
Uh-huh.
¿qué ended in a vowel? So you don't say ¿qué precio? You say ¿qué precio?
Mm.
¿Qué precio? ¿Qué precio tiene? Tiene also ends in an E. So that's going to stick to the next word.
Next words.
Tiene el. ¿Qué precio? Tiene el goes together as well. ¿Qué
Uh-huh.
precio tiene el? ¿Qué precio
Tiene.
tiene el cielo?
Tiene.
¿Ya? ¿Qué precio tiene el cielo? You only have three words in that phrase. ¿Qué precio
Wow.
tiene el
Yeah.
cielo? ¿Qué
Tiene.
precio tiene el
Tiene.
cielo?
Siempre. Wow. Okay.
You want to
That's a
try it,
good.
Miss Charlotte? A
¿Qué
ver,
precio? Okay, good, let's go. ¿Qué precio tiene
¿qué precio?
qué precio tiene el serio? What's the last word?
Almost. ¿Qué precio tiene el cielo?
¿Qué precio tiene el cielo?
Yes. ¿Qué precio tiene el cielo? ¿Qué precio
¿Qué
tiene el
tiene el
cielo?
cielo? Sí,
Ujú.
¿qué precio tiene sí, yeah, the last one again. Cielo,
Cielo.
cielo,
Cielo.
cielo. Oh,
Yes.
nice. And translate that for us.
¿Qué precio
Mhm,
tiene el cielo? ¿Qué precio tiene el
mhm.
cielo? Precio is, I wish I had a notebook. Precio, let me see if I can explain it without telling you in English. Hmm. No, you can't see.
Que sí,
Can you see
total.
that? ¿Qué precio?
Mhm,
$2.
mhm.
Precio.
Precio.
¿Qué precio?
Mhm.
$2. Did you understand that?
$2.
¿Cuánto
Two,
cuesta? Ujú.
two, something. ¿Qué precio?
$2.
$2.
Precio.
The price is $2.
Yes. So, precio,
Uh-huh,
precio.
uh-huh.
Ok, precio, ahora
Precio.
entendió. ¿Qué precio tiene el cielo?
¿Qué precio tiene cielo? ¿Qué
¿Entendió?
precio tiene cielo?
Ya.
I still
Es
don't.
¿cuánto cuesta? ¿Cuánto cuesta el cielo?
It says sky.
¿Cuánto cuesta? ¿$5?
Say $2.
$2 el cielo. $2.
Dollars
¿Cuánto
in the
cuesta?
sky. $2 in the sky. The price
¿Cuánto
is $2
cuesta?
in the sky.
Almost. ¿Cuánto cuesta?
How many? How many dollars in the sky?
¿Cuánto? ¿Qué precio? Precio, ¿qué precio?
What is the price?
Yes,
What is the price for $2 in the sky?
almost. What is the price del cielo?
What is the price of the sky?
Yes.
I'm
You know what? You know
a
what he's
little slow.
asking? No, no, no. It's a process. And once you get that process down, you remember because you went through a process to learn it, right? So now you
Mhm,
remember. ¿Qué precio tiene el cielo? What is the
mhm.
price of the sky? Mark Anthony is saying pretty much, I'll buy you the moon, I'll buy you the sky, I'll buy you what you want. How much is it? It's a love
Wow.
song.
Yes,
Yeah, it's
yes.
a love song. ¿Qué precio tiene el cielo? So now when you go to the grocery store, you'll remember, ¿qué precio tiene? ¿Qué precio tiene?
See,
You'll ask. Yeah.
see. So, and you know something, I think that that is true. And I think that once we start hearing things, more often, I think immersion for me being here has been great. I do. Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. What I really want to do is what my secret. You want to know my secret?
What
Do you
is
want
it?
to know my secret? My
Yes.
secret is I've always wanted to sing India, You Are My Man. That song,
Oh,
India, You Are My Man, I'm Your Woman.
no, I
Tú
don't know that one, but I'm
eres
gonna play it
un
after
hombre,
this.
mis mujeres. Oh, I can't think of it now,
I'm
but
gonna go look for it.
it's India. I'm your woman, you're my man. And it talks about the history. And I ought to go back and try it because I wanted to surprise my husband in singing and thinking that it would be so easy. And I was practicing on the bus and everything, and I just never could get it. And but I'm thinking now that I've practiced more at Spanish that I should go back to my goal and just try to learn that song. And like you say, maybe listen to it every day. Tú eres my, can't think of the words.
Oh, I'm gonna
You
look
you've
it
heard it.
up.
You've heard it.
I'm
You have
sure I,
heard it.
sure I
And when you
have.
hear it, you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, yes, that's the one.
India, India is it's called tú eres mi
Tienes
hombre.
Yes, you're my man.
I'm
You're
gonna
my
look it up
man.
because
Mi tienes mujeres.
oh
You're my man. Mi
I think
hombre.
I
Um,
found the lyrics. I'll play it after our meet. But I
okay.
found the lyrics. Es pregúntale la noche si ha visto alguna vez dos pieles abrazándose en una misma piel. That one.
Uh-huh. 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 That's it.
Cuerpo es casi tuyo, tu cuerpo es casi yo. I'm gonna play it because I don't know the
That's it.
beat.
There's
Yes.
that. It's beautiful. It is a
Oh,
beautiful song, and one of these days I'm going to sing it for my husband. So this conversation has inspired me to go back to maybe trying to learn that again. But tell us how to find you. I don't know if you did that.
yes. You can find me at www.fluentwithclaire.com. And also, I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook at Fluent with Claire.
Fluent with Claire on Instagram and Facebook too. Well, listen, it has been wonderful speaking to you. I can't wait until this airs because I want to share it with my cafe and conversation group.
Oh,
I think it would
yes.
be so fun, because we know each other, and it's another way. It's an also a good way for expats to connect. If you say get a group together, it's great if you got. I mean, because this is virtual, you could have expats from Mexico, Colombia, Panama, that want to learn Spanish. But think how much, a benefit to it can be if it's people that you know or people that you can actually go offline with, and take it a step further. So we could do things online with you and then schedule some time where we just try talking with each other in person, maybe. So there's a lot of possibilities here, and I'm glad that we had this time to talk. So I appreciate you being on the show, and I bid you a wonderful, magnificent day.
Thank you, thank you.
Que tengas un buen día. Did I do it?
Oh, gracias.
Que
Que
tengas un
tengas
buen
un buen
día. Yes.
día. Muy
So,
bien. Oh my
que
gosh.
tengas un buen día.
Yes. Yes.
I'm
Que
fancy.
tengas is one word. Yes. Que tengas
I'm
un buen día.
trying. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Yes. Thank you, Miss Charlotte. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Not bad. Wasn't that good? That was like even better than I expected it to be, honestly. We had a conversation about what she's doing, and I thought, well, this could be pretty good. But as we sat there and we really got into the nuts and bolts about it, I really loved when she talked about, like getting into the culture and falling in love with the language. I really like that. And for a lot of us who say, that we love Panama, do you love the language? That question. And she also had said something. to me that she didn't say on here, but she was talking about the biggest lessons that she's learned being an expat. And I want to read it. She says, it's important to accept that you won't always be the same person you were before, and that's okay. I love that. You know, I have a new slogan out, and it says, you see the world differently when you see the world. Baby. That right there. Yes, that right there will cook. I really, really like that. So listen, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. Thank you for your attention. You can find us everywhere at Black Expats in Panama, or we're .net on the web. You know, follow us on YouTube. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. I just love it when you're engaged. And remember that we will be releasing Chariot, our mini documentary. Our mini documentary is it's 15 minutes, guys. So manage your expectations, okay? But it's a powerful 15 minutes, and we are having an event on March 14th, and it's going to be a red carpet preview. The first people who see this mini documentary are going to be Black expats living here in Panama. And then we'll do the red carpet preview. We'll have dinner. We'll have a cocktail hour. It's Black elegance. It'll be photos. And then to top it off, we're having the Black Expat Awards. And so you all have been amazing, contributing, nominations of your friends and other Black expats and Panamanians who have engaged and supported the Black expat communities. You've nominated them for awards. Nominations are closing um, on February 14th, or it probably will be closed by the time you see this. And then awards will be given on March 4th. You do not have to be present to win. But voting will start on February 15th, and it'll be listed and posted on our social media and on our website so that you can vote for who you want to win these categories. So I just want to thank you guys for your love and support. 2025 was just amazing. 2026 is starting out the same way, and I just could not be more grateful. So thank you. I love you. I love you. I love you. And there's just nothing, absolutely nothing that you can do about it. This is your girl, Charlotte Van Horn, Black Expats in Panama. I'll see you next time. Gracias.